Greetings everyone. Today we're diving into a fanfiction review from one of the original big three anime of the early 2000s, Bleach, created by Kubo. Now before we get into the fanfiction itself, I want to lay down a proper bare bones breakdown of the Bleach world because this story absolutely expects you to already understand the core mechanics of the series. At its foundation, Bleach is centered in Japan and divides existence into three major zones. First is the human world, where ordinary humans live, mostly unaware of the supernatural forces operating around them. Second is the Seirete, within the Soul Society, essentially the realm where Shinigami or Death Reapers reside. You could loosely call it heaven, but it's more of a structured spiritual government. And finally, there is Hueco Mundo, a desolate spatial dimension where hollows exist. These three realms function in a fragile balance. Humans for the most part live normal lives, only a small number possess access to supernatural abilities. When humans die, they become souls known as pluses. If they have no overwhelming regrets, they can pass on properly. However, some pluses linger in the human world, either lost or emotionally tethered. It is the Shinigami's responsibility to locate these wandering souls and perform konso, liberating them so they may reach the Soul Society. But when a human soul becomes engulfed in intense negative emotions, these things become far darker. If that emotional attachment is tied to a specific place, the soul can become a grudge-filled spirit chained to the land. If a Shinigami fails to intervene, the spiritual chain attached to the soul's chest, chain of fate, begins to corrode. Eventually that chain snaps. When it does, the soul undergoes a violent metamorphosis. The negative emotions literally hollow out a hole in their chest, transforming them into a hollow, a monster that devours human souls. After feeding, these hollows primarily reside in Huecamundo, and the Shinigami's job is to exorcise these hollows, purifying them and restoring balance to the reincarnation cycle. For much of early Bleach, this balance between soul consumption and purification was the central premise before the story evolved into far more complex power systems and faction conflicts. Now transitioning into the fanfiction itself, the story is titled The Grim Reaper starting from entering Rukia's body. It currently has 132 chapters and sits at a 3.4 star rating on WTR Lab. I would describe it as a non-user friendly fanfiction, meaning it absolutely expects the reader to already know the general synopsis of the entire Bleach series. This is not something you read as your introduction to the universe. Rather, it serves those who simply want more time within the Bleach world with expanded explorations of characters and alternate timeline developments. The novel was originally written in Chinese and translated into English. Fortunately, the translation quality remains largely intact, the grammar is coherent, the narrative flow is satisfying, and it does not feel disjointed, which is often a concern of translated web fiction. The protagonist is named Kamishiro Hoshi, an ordinary nobody from the real world who transmigrates into Bleach. Reborn as a baby in Katakura Town, after a time skip of several years, we find him as a teenager raising his younger sister alone, with the parents conveniently removed from the equation, a classic fractured family trope. However, what makes his situation compelling is that he retains knowledge of the Bleach plot. He understands that Katakura Town is destined to become a spiritual battlefield. Knowing this, he spends years working odd jobs, desperately attempting to earn enough money to relocate himself and his sister before the inevitable chaos arrives. And this detail stands out because moving is not some easy, instantaneous solution. Funds need to be accumulated, housing needs to be secured, logistics have to be arranged. For those who understand financial hardship, that realism adds weight to his desperation. He is not chasing power for glory, he is trying to survive. Unfortunately, before he can gather enough money to escape, a hollow discovers the siblings. What follows is a desperate runaway scene. Kamishiro comes to the sobering conclusion that he may die that day holding his sister in his arms, reasoning that at least they will be together in death. Just before the hollow delivers the finishing blow, Rukia Kuchiki arrives and vanquishes the creature. That night, overwhelmed by frustration at his own helplessness, Kamishiro falls asleep. It is here that his golden finger awakens. His cheat ability manifests as a system capable of projecting his consciousness into the past, where his soul integrates into characters from Bleach's history. He does not simply observe, he coexists. His soul shares a body with the host, meaning two consciousness must navigate one vessel. Both individuals are aware of each other, forced to deal with the psychological reality of dual occupancy. And yes, as a male soul, he can share a body with female hosts, which introduces a minor degree of gender bending, though is more structural than fan service driven. As Kamishiro lives through these past simulations, he inevitably awakens back in his own body. Here's where the mechanics become more complex. Skills he helps the host develop are partially transferred to him. Even more significantly, the world's timeline shifts to accommodate his actions in the past. The more simulations he experiences, the more the present diverges from the original Bleach canon. Each sleep cycle alters reality incrementally, ideally strengthening him enough to protect his sister from the disasters he knows are coming. Overall, I consider this a fresh take on the Bleach universe. The cheat ability is interesting because it requires effort. Kamishiro must build a rapport with the hosts he shares bodies with. He cannot simply dominate them. Cooperation is necessary. There is a strategic element involved in choosing how to influence the past while destabilizing the future beyond control. At the time of writing this review, I have only read up to chapter 20, so I will remain conservative with my rating. I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. My hesitation stems from uncertainty regarding the long-term direction. As more simulations occur, the narrative becomes increasingly original and divergent from Bleach's established storyline. This could elevate the story into something uniquely compelling, or it could cause it to drift too far from the core themes that made Bleach engaging in the first place. Nevertheless, if you are someone who wants extended time in the Bleach universe and enjoys transmigration systems with timeline altering consequences, I do recommend giving this fanfiction a try. The link is in the description below, and as always, if you enjoyed this review, consider subscribing for more anime and fanfiction breakdowns. Have a great day.